August 1942, just 8 months after Pearl Harbor, the U.S. launched its first major offensive of the Pacific War on an island few had ever heard of, Guadalcanal. What followed was a 6-month, hellish battle of attrition across land, sea, and air, all for control of one critical airfield. These are 10 rare images that reveal the true cost of the fighting. Our first image, dated February 1943, perfectly captures the true, non-human enemy faced by the troops on Guadalcanal, the climate. This is not a photo of a firefight, but one of pure survival. Here, U.S. Marines are shown hanging out thousands of rounds of machine gun ammunition belts to dry. The tropical environment of Guadalcanal was a relentless enemy. Constant rain, high humidity, and swampy conditions meant that ammunition, weapons, and even food quickly degraded. The immediate goal of this work was tactical. Wet ammunition misfired, jammed machine guns, and led to catastrophic failures during night attacks. These Marines were performing vital logistical maintenance under harsh conditions, directly ensuring their combat readiness. The fight was not just against the Japanese. It was against the island itself. The battle for Guadalcanal was as brutal on the water as it was on land. This haunting image shows a Navy pharmacist's mate treating an injured survivor. He is one of the crew from the destroyer transport, USS Hulton, which was sunk by a fierce Japanese air raid on August 30, 1942. The Hulton was hit repeatedly while providing anti-submarine patrol off Lunga Point, resulting in the loss of 51 men. This sinking occurred barely 3 weeks into the campaign, demonstrating the immediate and relentless Japanese counterattack against Allied naval support. The constant threat of air and sea attack meant that every man on the island, including corpsmen and medical personnel like the one seen here, operated under extreme duress. The simple act of tending to a wound often took place under fire, underscoring the total commitment required during the early, chaotic weeks in what quickly became known as Ironbottom Sound. The intense close-quarters combat on Guadalcanal was a psychological battle as much as a physical one. This photo illustrates the pervasive threat of enemy deception. Here, a group of U.S. Marines is carefully inspecting a camouflaged booby trap in the dense tropical terrain. The Japanese forces, known for their fierce defense and willingness to fight to the last man, frequently employed such traps, including tripwires, concealed grenades, and sharpened stakes, to slow the American advance and inflict casualties long after an area was secured. For the American troops, every step was a calculated risk. The constant vigilance required to navigate this environment, where a hidden device could detonate at any moment, compounded the mental strain. This psychological warfare contributed heavily to the severe cases of combat fatigue recorded throughout the 6-month campaign. This raw image lays bare the horrific toll of the Guadalcanal campaign, showing 3 Japanese soldiers killed in action. The desperate Japanese defense, characterized by fierce banzai charges and a refusal to retreat, led to catastrophic losses for their forces. By the time the island was evacuated by the Japanese in February 1943, they had suffered over 30,000 casualties, including more than 19,000 killed, a staggering number. Many Japanese soldiers died not just from combat, but from disease and starvation due to failed supply lines. This profound loss of men, ships, and aircraft proved to be a major turning point of the entire Pacific War. The campaign effectively ended Japanese expansion in the South Pacific, forcing the Imperial Army onto the strategic defensive for the remainder of the conflict. The American victory here was the true beginning of the long road to Tokyo. The final, enduring cost of Guadalcanal is captured in the makeshift cemeteries carved out of the jungle. This simple marker belongs to Private First Class William Cameron, killed in the line of duty on September 10, 1942. The marker itself tells a story of fraternity and grief. The second sign, quoting a Marine rallying cry, reads, "And when he goes to heaven, to St. Peter he'll tell," another Marine reporting. This illustrates the profound sense of unity and sacrifice that defined the Marine Corps on the island. While Guadalcanal was a victory, the human price was steep. Every cross represented a young man who died fighting starvation, disease, and an entrenched enemy. These temporary jungle graves were a stark reminder that while the objective was an airfield, the sacrifice was everything. This single portrait encapsulates the brutal exhaustion of the 6-month ground war. This battle-stained American infantryman is photographed immediately after securing a key position, a 1,500-foot rise known simply as the Grassy Knoll. The struggle for elevated terrain was continuous and often resolved in hand-to-hand combat. The soldier's fixed bayonet on his rifle is a testament to the close-quarters fighting required to take peaks like this one. Control of these heights was vital for 2 reasons: observation over Henderson Field and protection against the relentless Japanese counterattacks. The Marines and soldiers on Guadalcanal endured constant exposure, lack of sleep, and tropical diseases, yet they secured peak after peak. This man's face reveals the sheer physical and mental toll exacted by the campaign for every inch of jungle terrain. Control of the island was entirely dependent on what happened at sea. Here, United States Marines advance along a jungle track toward Tassafaronga, the location of one of the most critical naval engagements of the entire campaign. The Marines' advance along the north coast was always a risk, as the Japanese constantly sought to deliver reinforcements and supplies, known as the Tokyo Express. The Battle of Tassafaronga, fought in late November 1942, was a desperate Japanese attempt to land drums of supplies. Although the U.S. Navy suffered a heavy tactical defeat in that nighttime engagement, the battle successfully broke up the Japanese supply run. The failure of the Tokyo Express to adequately supply the Japanese troops was a major factor that directly enabled the success of this Marine advance. We now pivot back to the very start of the operation, August 7, 1942. This iconic image captures the first wave of U.S. Marines hitting the beach from landing craft. The operation was codenamed Watchtower, and it was the first major Allied amphibious landing in the Pacific. Crucially, the initial assault achieved total surprise. Japan had roughly 2,000 engineers and laborers on the island building the critical airfield, and they were entirely caught off guard. This lack of initial resistance allowed the Marines to secure the beaches and the vital, unfinished airstrip, later named Henderson Field, with minimal casualties. This swift, successful landing was deceptive. It gave the Americans a foothold, but it immediately triggered the massive Japanese counterresponse by sea and air, setting the stage for the next 6 months of brutal, close-quarters fighting. The struggle to resupply the starving troops was desperate for the Japanese. This devastating image shows the result of a disastrous attempt to land reinforcements and supplies via the Tokyo Express, the code name for their nightly destroyer runs. The Japanese often packed small landing zones with troops and supplies, making them highly vulnerable to American naval and air interdiction. When these operations failed, as seen here, the losses were horrific. The bodies strewn across the beach are stark evidence of the complete failure to sustain their forces. The Japanese strategic defeat was essentially confirmed by the inability to either destroy Henderson Field or successfully sustain their own men. The failure of the Tokyo Express turned the tide of the ground war decisively toward the Allies. Our final image, showing American soldiers queuing for their meal, is a stark reminder that many men who survived the bullets and bayonets were nearly defeated by hunger and disease. This daily ritual reveals the struggle for basic sustenance. The island's relentless tropical heat and humidity meant that fresh food supplies quickly spoiled. Troops often had to subsist on meager, spoiled, and sometimes even maggot-infested rations. This led to widespread malnutrition, dysentery, and crippling fatigue. The enduring legacy of Guadalcanal is not just the strategic shift in the Pacific, but the sheer endurance of the American fighting man. They faced a prepared enemy, a deadly disease environment, and a logistical nightmare. Yet they held the line and secured the future of the Allied Pacific offensive. The Battle of Guadalcanal was not won by technology, but by sheer endurance. For 6 months, Marines and soldiers fought the enemy, the sea, and the jungle itself. The victory secured Henderson Field and broke the Japanese war machine in the South Pacific. It was the first true step toward victory in the Pacific. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the History Hub for more compelling stories.